Okay, now I'm on the top of page 5 if you're following along. Poetry? Nothing to do with chickens or turkeys, thank goodness. I have to admit, I'm a little scared of things with feathers ever since my early days at Pedorama. I still have nightmares about the day a large green parrot escaped and flung himself at my cage, screeching, "Yum yum, time to eat! Bawk!" He was still shrieking as Carl, the store clerk, carried him away. That unpleasant memory was interrupted when someone blurted, "I'm a poet and I don't know it. My feet show it. They're long fellows." "I heard that, Kirk," said Mrs. Brisbane. Now, as I was saying, much of this term will be spent reading and writing poetry. The groans were loud. I guess some people are afraid of poetry, even without feathers. Seth squirmed in his seat and pretended to pound his head on the table. "Poetry," he moaned. "Sit still, Seth," said Miss Brisbane. Sitting still wasn't easy for Seth. Now that he was practically right in front of me, I could see him wiggling and jiggling in his chair, which made Gail Morgenstern laugh. "Stop giggling, Gail," Miss Brisbane warned. Gail stopped giggling and started hiccuping. "Please go get a drink of water," Miss Brisbane told her. She turned to the new girl. "Tabitha, please put that toy away." Everyone stared at Tabitha, including me. She was cradling a scruffy stuffed bear in her arms. The gray bear had cotton coming out of his ears and wore washed out blue overalls and a button missing. Even his smile seemed a little faded. "Now please," said Miss Brisbane. It was quiet in the room, thank goodness. I'm afraid if Gail had been there, we would have heard peals of laughter and heaps of hiccups. Tabitha slid the shabby bear into the slot in her table without a word. Right about then, Principal Morales marched through the door. "Sorry for interrupting, Miss Brisbane. I just want to personally welcome you all back to school." The principal looked spiffy with a tie that had little pencils all over it. He always wore a tie because he was the most important person at Longfellow's school. "Thank you, Mr. Morales," said Miss Brisbane. "We have a new student, Tabitha Clark, and a whole new setup for our class, as you can see." "Welcome, Tabitha," said the principal. "I'm sure you'll love it here in room 26. I'm glad to see that our friend Humphrey is back as well." He walked all the way across the classroom to my cage. "Glad to see you," I squeaked in my loudest squeak. "Hi, old pal," he greeted me. He turned back to the rest of the class. "You can all learn a lot from Humphrey, and I wish you a very successful semester." After he left, I turned my attention back to Tabitha. She was still staring down. I couldn't see her face clearly, but it was almost as red as her copper-colored hair. I guess I watched her a long time because suddenly the recess bell rang. "Come on, Tabitha, let's get our coats," Mandy said. Tabitha slipped the stuffed bear into her pocket and followed Mandy to the classroom. As soon as the students were gone, Miss Loomis bustled into the room. Two pink dots of excitement colored her cheeks, and her curls bounced in all directions. "Are you ready? Should we do it?" she asked Miss Brisbane excitedly. "Why not?" my teacher answered. "I'll make room for him now." They walked over to the table in front of the window where my cage sits. "Sure, he'll fit right here," said Miss Loomis, pointing to a spot near my house. Miss Brisbane slid some of my supplies down to the end of the table. "Now, you're sure he's not a lot of trouble?" "Oh, no, not nearly as much trouble as a hamster," Miss Loomis answered. What? Not nearly as much trouble as a hamster? Since when have I caused any trouble in room 26? Since when did I totally dedicate myself to helping my classmates and teachers?" Surprisingly, Miss Brisbane didn't correct her. I was about to squeak up for myself when the bell rang and Miss Loomis scurried out of the room. I wondered who wasn't as much trouble as I am. He, Miss Loomis had said. He who? Curiosity made my whiskers twitch and my paws tingle. My fur was practically standing on end at the tables as the tables filled up. I saw Tabitha slip her bear out of her pocket. Heidi saw it too and rolled her eyes at Gail, who almost giggled but managed to stop herself. Now, class, I told you that there were some changes in our room this year, Miss Brisbane announced. Another of the changes is a brand new classroom pet. I think he'll add a lot to room 26. New classroom pet? Why did she want a new classroom pet when she already had a wonderful, terrific, perfect classroom pet, namely me? Was I being replaced? Miss Loomis entered carrying a large glass tank. I couldn't see what it was because my classmates were standing up, craning their necks, oohing and eyeing and chattering away. "It's a frog!" shouted Heidi. Miss Loomis set the glass box right next to my cage. Now I could see some water, rocks, and something green, and really, really, really lumpy. "Meet our new frog," said Miss Brisbane. "Miss Loomis will tell you about him." "Well, boys and girls, as you may know, we have a frog in our classroom. His name is George, and he's a bullfrog. Right before the holidays, one of our students brought in this frog to keep George company. We named him Og the Frog. Unfortunately, George didn't like Og, and being a bullfrog, George let us know he didn't like Og by making a lot of noise. That upset Og, I guess, because he would leap and splash all day long while George was croaking. My classmates laughed, but I didn't. On the one paw, I could see why George didn't want another frog to compete with. On the other paw, croaking at Og wasn't a very friendly way to act. With all that noise, we were having trouble getting any work done at all, Miss Loomis continued. So I asked Miss Brisbane if your class would like to have Og, and she said yes. He's a very quiet frog. Do you like him? My friends all yelled, "Yes!" Everyone except Tabitha, who was secretly petting her little bear. Somebody went, "Ribbit, ribbit," in a funny croaking voice. It wasn't the frog. "I heard that, Kirk. That's quite enough. Og can provide the sound effects from now on. I think he'll make a nice friend for Humphrey," Miss Brisbane said. "A friend for me? At least he wasn't my replacement. Whew! But I was already friends with every single person in room 26, so she didn't really need to find me another one. Still, I didn't want to act unfriendly the way George had."